Hey everybody, welcome back to Wrestling IQ 101. Remember, subscribe to the page and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're here right now with Nick Destiny. How are you, man?
Good, how are you guys?
Doing good.
So far, so good.
Good.
All right, so Nick,
lots of interesting things going on in the world of pro wrestling these days.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely true. Are you
Definitely true.
Are you like an avid follower of like current wrestling news?
Absolutely. Even though like I'm on break right now, I'm kind of trying to do some other things in fields of either bodybuilding or stuff like that to try to maybe transition myself back into it somehow. But I got to be honest with you. A lot of people are overshadowing the indie scene and the indie workers and everything like that, which I think is absolutely asinine because there are so many talented indie wrestlers out there right now that I can just start naming guys right off the list that should be there, and unfortunately they're working, their way up. So that I respect and I understand it. And I'm the type of guy that really has no ill feelings towards anybody that's trying to do this because I broke, barriers as well. I'm not the biggest, I'm not the strongest, I'm not the fastest, but I got, the mindset that, hey, I wanted to do this and nothing and nobody was going to stop me. And that's what I see now a lot when I go to indie events and, I get invited to come down and look at the talent and look at the shows and just see these young kids pouring their heart and soul into every single match that's going on. And back in the day, when I started, like 15 years ago, I mean, you had guys like that, but it wasn't like the consistency it is now. Like each guy is like going out there and trying to, pop that. And I can't think of, really anybody right now that's slowing down because the business is just such a boom. I mean, not to discredit the WWE, they're the monopoly of it all. But when you go right down into the indies, I mean, you guys ought to know it's everywhere. It really is, and not many people realize it.
it's the truth.
So, WWE obviously is full of indie wrestlers now. Like, who would you say is your favorite guy, or you think is the best worker in the game right now?
Right now, who has it overall in the main roster, or NXT, or overall?
Overall.
In the company.
Overall.
Whew. Well, there's several that come to mind within NXT and on Raw and on SmackDown. Well, I'll just give you my three main. Well, two. There's two in NXT, and everybody knows that Nakamura and Joe are going to be there soon, and they're already stars and bona fide, superstars the way it is. But I mean, you got two guys like Bobby Roode and Ty Dillinger, who have, Ty Dillinger has been working his ass off for I don't know how long, 2 years now, sticking with the same stick, doing the same stuff, and it is getting over like hotcakes. This kid broke through 2 years ago, I think, when he started this. Everybody said he wasn't, just a flash in the pan. He's just going to be like a normal AKA jobber and just, do little stuff like that, and then you'll never see him again and everything like that. But hey, he stayed the course. He's doing his thing, and now he's got everybody on his side. Then you got Bobby Roode coming in. That's a game changer in itself. Now, when you look at Raw, you got Kevin Owens, who I think is spectacular. Very over. A lot of people don't think that he's that good, but I think he's overall. And a lot of people knock him just physical wise and the way he looks. But when you scratch that out, and you look at Mike's skills, and you look at everything that he brings to the table, you can't deny that man's credibility. I mean, he's earned everything he's got. The same goes with Rollins, and everybody can say he's unsafe, but the same thing goes with him, too. He's up there, and he knows what he's doing, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have been working his ass off in the past 15 so years. All those young guys that are there for a reason. And that's the thing, like everybody that is there for a reason, and to me, on SmackDown, you got The Miz, and you got, The Miz doesn't get enough credit. Mike is such an awesome guy, such a talented worker, performer, all-around talker. He is right when he says that for 10 plus years he's been doing this in that company and sticking to it. Not one injury, whether people like to say he wrestles soft or not, which obviously is a work to further storylines. To me, he's got it overall, and he is very, underlooked in my opinion. And to me, another one is Apollo Crews, which I don't know why they're just I have no explanation why they're putting the screws to him. I mean, he was on fire when he was in NXT, and then as soon as he hit the main roster, it was goodbye.
Yeah, I agree with you. Would you personally, would you rather have a memorable program with another person, or would you rather have a weak championship run?
I would rather have a memorable program, to be honest, because titles to me are, I've held the title before, and in the Indies, and it, to me, like it's the moments, man. What I got to wrestle Jerry the King Lawler. To me, that moment will stand out in time. I will never ever, and unless I keep pushing myself, which I'm currently trying to do to get back in the game. But you never say never. But it was such a great feeling, a moment. You're when you're told you're working a Hall of Famer, and then you're told this is the Hall of Famer you're working, and he's not just I've got to work Snuka, which was great. Got to work Volkov, which was great. They're all Hall of Famers, but the thing about it is not all Hall of Famers can really go out there and want to work. There's guys, Hall of Fame guys that go on the Indies and are just there. I'm not knocking them. They've earned that spot. They can call their own shots because they're who they are. And then that's cool. To me, it was just an honor to work guys like that, no matter what. But, I'll tell you, there was a big difference working guys like Volkov and Snuka to guys like Lawler and Eugene and Billy Gunn and all that stuff that I worked before. And they were all, I can go out there and work 10-minute matches, 15-minute matches with them. With the other guys, it was, quick 5 minutes and, boom, 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 their usual stuff, and then that's it.
So, going back to talking about wrestling these, a guy like Jerry the King, for example, would you rather have one night going against a person that you're not really familiar with, or would you rather go against another indie wrestler that you've had a lot of experience wrestling with, that like their every move that they're going to do, that you have more chemistry with?
Definitely, I'll go with your second choice, another indie worker, because they're the ones that are on the same level as I am. To me, you mentioned the Lawler thing, and as I have as well. Those are just like one shot type of deals. But I'm gonna throw a name out there: Tony Depp and Anthony Depp, and you guys. I don't know if you guys heard of him. I'm sure you have. He's a very talented guy. He's been very talented up in my area in Pennsylvania, and he's also making a name for himself in CZW right now. Okay. I think he just got on board down there. Tremendous guy, and that's one guy that I knew from around my area because he worked around here first, and I always said not directly to him, but to other people I said this kid, and there's a couple others like Arbo and Andy Harner, who are tremendous workers as well. I said those kids need to branch out, and one of my buddies does the local fed here, and he runs shows in my area, Mount Carmel. And I told all those guys before, I said, you guys are talented, you're way too talented to just be stuck in one place. You need to branch out, go here, go there. And, maybe I said this 4 or 5 years ago, but I am glad right now that I'm seeing guys like Deppin and Andy Harner go on out there in like New Jersey, CZW, making a name for themselves. And Tony Deppin's a guy that I would love to have a serious, legit program with, because I know he's a guy that can go, and I know that he's a guy that can go 110%. And there's no
Yeah, so can you kind of tell us how did you get started in wrestling, and kind of like who trained you to become a wrestler?
Well, it was a funny thing. I was 14 years old, and I was going through an odd phase in high school where I was getting picked on a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people have gone through that. But at that time, which was 1998, it wasn't really out there as it is today. So it was just a thing where I wasn't interested in high school sports. A lot of people told me you should get involved in this, that, and the other. But for me, it was always wrestling. That's all I did was watch wrestling. I'd go to school. I do whatever they tell me to do. I'd come home, from 3 o'clock or 3:30 till 10:30. It was nonstop wrestling, whether it was videotapes, whether it was, Monday nights, whether it was pay-per-views, whatnot. It was always that. And then, I started thinking to myself, how would one go about this? So, I didn't have a computer at that time, so I would go to school, and during, I would sneak out lunch breaks, and, they have the computer labs in there. So I thought to myself, I'm like, the only way I'm probably going to find my answer I'm looking for, because I live in a very small rural town, is if I go out and try to research it. So I typed in, I snuck in the computer, there's nobody there, so I go in myself, and I started typing in, pro wrestling schools, and then a bunch came up. So, that didn't really narrow it down. And then I typed in pro wrestling schools in Pennsylvania. And the one that popped up, the one that was right there, the very first one, was the Wild Samoans Training Center, which was odd to me, because I clicked on that, and boom, right away you see Alpha, you see, all the Samoan heritage, you see Yokozuna, you see the late Yokozuna, you see, the Undertaker posting messages on there that it's, one of the most reputable schools and sanctioned by the WWF at that time, and all this stuff. And when you're 14, that's very, it's very appealing, especially when it's something you want to do and something you want to get into. Of course, I told my parents, and they were very negative about it, which they still are. They don't like the idea of me doing it, and they never did. But I will say that they supported me, because, if it wasn't for them, at my age, I wouldn't have gotten that start. Now, my start was going down there, and also looking at me, and he's like, I got to be honest with you. He's like, you're 14, you're maybe 140 pounds. Are you sure you want to do this? Like, to me, you're too young. So he's like, I said, I definitely want to do this. And he made me a deal. He said, I'll tell you what, if, we train every Tuesday and Thursday nights, and this was up in Hazleton and Allentown. And he's like, if you come back every week for 6 months, I'll train you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, if you come back for every week for 6 months, but here's a catch. You're not going to touch the ring. You're just going to watch the guys, and I want to see if you show up. So I said, all right. So, of course, my parents didn't drive, and even if they did, I don't think they would have, took the time out to obviously bring me there every week. So what I did was I'd go to school, and I'd offer, I had like 3 or 4 friends. I'd offer one of them, like $20, $30 in gas money, and say, hey, would you mind taking me to Hazleton to do this pro wrestling thing? And I had a couple friends that were very supportive of me doing it, and, really didn't say, I don't think it's a good idea, you'll never do it. I had some good friends that, were supportive and really did take me under consideration, and hey, I'm gonna try to help this kid, and that's what I did. And there were times where, I couldn't find rides back, and I slept in the ring and in the gym, obviously to remain there for the show day the next day or something like that. But to me, it was all worth it. I loved it, and I'd do it again, because that was honestly the best times of my life. Making those bonds and meeting people and going out there and doing something you love with the people that, share the same bond and passion. There's nothing like it. Nothing.
Can you just kind of go through what derailed your wrestling career and your status in the business right now?
Well, it haunts me, but I'm kind of breaking away from it. I graduated from there at the Wild Samoans Center in the year 2000. I was 16 years old, and Alpha was just starting to Pops was starting to get me booked up in USA Pro Wrestling up in Deer Park, Long Island. I did some JCW stuff. I did some JPW stuff. I did some ISPW stuff with Tommy Fierro, who's a fantastic guy. Of course, he's no longer doing it, but I was going everywhere. I did NWA Jersey. I was going everywhere I could and getting booked. And at that, I was not even 20. I was 16, 17 years old. We're talking here. And then, 2004 came around, and I'm still rolling high. And that I had a funeral in New York, family funeral coming back, George Washington Bridge, traffic, of course. After I passed that, I slowly gnawed off at the wheel. No drugs, no alcohol. I was just very tired. I didn't get any sleep the night before. But just, I was up partying with friends and everything like that. So I really didn't get any sleep. And it was just one of those freak things that, I literally fell asleep at the wheel. And my car ended up, I was going 80 east. My car ended up on 80 west. So I got hit head on. I crossed the divider. Crossed onto the other lanes, and car nailed me head on. The next thing I remember, there's a saw sawing me out of the car because I was like cramped. My leg was obviously stuck in there, and there was no way of getting it out, and I wake up and they tell me this, that wrong, and it was just one of the, I was at 19 years old at that point, and I thought, hey, this is it. I just killed my career. I knew it. I absolutely knew it. And it's unfortunate, but hey, what can you do? The only thing that helped me kind of get over it and say, hey, it happens is, as soon as my phone got plugged in the hospital room, I was waiting for my parents to call me and everything like that, of course. But first person that actually called me was Alpha, who is Pops, and that meant a lot to me because how he got that number, I still don't know. I don't know if maybe my parents gave it to him, somebody, but anyways, he got the number and he calls me down to New Jersey. I was in St. Joseph's Medical Center there for 2-3 weeks, and he's like, son, he's like, I'm sorry to hear what happened. And I'm sitting there, I'm a mess. I'm crying. I'm like, I don't want my career to be over. I want to get back in the ring. All that stuff was just coming out. And he's like, hey, stuff happens and you can't, you have to fight back and, you can't let this stop you, and that was, once I heard that and I hung up the phone, my mentality changed. I started not to feel sorry for myself and just started, to focus. When doctors came back and told me, even before and after the surgery, they're like, not only will you not be able to get in the ring again, you're most likely not going to be able to walk right again, and you're probably going to walk with the limp. And, to me, it was just one of those things where, all right, it's like, get me out of here because I want to go back and I want to start rehabbing, like, now. And it was on from when they told me that, and it was just one of those things where I knew I had to get back on the horse and start riding it again, no matter what. And I did that. I got back in the middle of 05, and, I was still doing, going around getting bookings here and there. It wasn't the same, I couldn't do much, obviously, because of my leg. I was very limited, and I know, some of the guys were probably frustrated as well, and I kept it a very dark secret because I didn't want to get it out there that, hey, I have a very bad wheel, and, I really, haven't really told a lot of people at that point. I kind of just kept it to myself, which I should have done. I should have opened up about it, and I should have talked about it more, and I should have explained myself to the world and to the business promoters and everything like that, to the workers themselves. I think they earned that right for me to tell them, hey, this is why I can't do this, and this is why I can't do that. There's reasons behind it, whether people like to criticize this or that, and it is, I'll take the heat for that because that is my fault. I should have spoke up and said something from the beginning, instead of trying to work around it. That was my mentality. Work around it, work around it, work around it, no matter what, work around it.
You were also airlifted, right? From the accident to the hospital?
Yeah. It was a very traumatic experience. I was, obviously when you're there, but I was there by myself. I had no family, no friends, no nothing. To me, I felt like I was literally in prison, and it was worse because I couldn't move. I was, strapped on bed. My leg was propped up. My arm was tied up. It was just a lot of stuff. There was psychologists coming in, talking to me, telling me, how I'm dealing with it and everything. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie. I broke down numerous times and I just said, you know what? I need to get out of here. I need to go home. I don't care if if I need to be in another hospital. I just know I just can't be here. I just want to go back home.
Yeah.
And, of course, they were waiting for an ambulance and all this stuff to transport me. Now I'm waiting there for 2-3 weeks. It was 23 days to be exact. And I called my best friend up and I said, listen, he had a pickup truck. And I said, listen, I'm stuck here. I don't know what to do. Because they came and visited me a couple times, but I just wanted to get home. And he's like, well, what do you need? And I said, I need to get home. And he's like, what do you want me to do? I said, come pick me up. So I told the doctors that I had to sign a waiver because I was 19, and they wouldn't let me leave because they said it was unsafe, and they wanted to transport me via ambulance. And the one doctor, because I was so adamant about getting back into the ring, he's like, you know what? He's like, I'm gonna let you go. You're gonna sign the paper. I'm gonna let you go. You're gonna go with your friend, and if something happens to you on the way there, don't come back to this hospital. I said, don't worry, I won't. I'm planning on it. I said, I'm very thankful you did what you did. I said, but in all honesty, I've been here way long enough, going through a lot of shit mentally. I said, I need to get, back on my own turf here. I can't take it. So my friend came and got me, and we rode back, and everything was great. After that, I went to a little hospital here. They took off everything, and about a month later, it happened in March, and April 19th, I was back, and they sent me to rehab, and I started rehabbing. I finished rehab from April to October. I was rehabbing, so then once that got done, I got back in the game in probably November of 2005, and I just kept going, and then in 2014, I was basically approached by somebody who will remain unnamely because right now I don't know what's going on with the situation. This guy approached me. He's from Philadelphia, and he's like, we're doing a movie documentary. He's like, it's called Wrestling with Disaster. He's like, we kind of want to, he's been reading my story on Facebook, and he's like, we want to see, we want to get you out there. We want to expose you and get your story out there, and maybe for, a lesson for everybody else. And because, after the accident, what happened was I got prescribed a lot of pain medication. And for me to keep going after that, it took a lot of medication. I'm not going to lie. What I wasn't doing, which a lot of people, I don't know if they were, but I never saw myself doing, was going out in the street and buying from people. It was always a doctor. It was always a prescription. But was I abusing it? Yes, I was. But luckily, I had a great doctor who worked with me and worked with me to the point where I didn't need to go out and buy it because all I had to do was, go there and say, hey, I need this, and he would do it for me. He would write me up a prescription, and, no matter what, I can go, and even if I pop 10 a day, which I was popping 15 a day, I go and run out months worth in 2 weeks, and I go back to him, and he'd be compliant, and he'd write me up a prescription, and that was that, and it, not to put it on him or anything, but it saved me because I didn't have to go and get in trouble with people that I don't know or don't trust or, not know what I'm doing. And, to me, that's kind of helping me out because, there's a lot of people that, and I've heard the stories where a lot of people are like, how did you get off that? How did you stop that? Well,
Yeah,
I had a doctor that tapered me off. I was on 10 a day, 15 a day. I went from that to 8. Then from that, then the next month I went from 8 to 6. Then the next month from 6 to 4. So I took it like that, which was cool because I have a doctor again that, a lot of people put the blame on doctors and prescriptions, but hey, that doctor worked and helped me got out of that stuff. So I can't knock him for that. I can't. There's no other doctor, and I've heard the stories where people are like, I go to this clinic here, and they saw that I take one or too many more, and they cut me off, and now I'm on the street by them, and I wouldn't be able to do that. It's just not me.
Well, thank God, because that could have led to an awful road.
Yeah.
Do you think if you didn't have the accident, do you think like you would have kept going in the wrestling business and you?
Absolutely. I had plethora of opportunities. I was about to go to one of their developmental territories down there. Just to try out and everything like that. That was like right before the accident happened. So to me, I was in the best shape of my life. I was over 220 pounds. I had a lot of mass to me. I put on a lot of weight. I was doing the right things. I was, training the right way. Everything was just 110%. And then, once that happened, it kind of, and an analogy I'll use is like, Brian Pillman. What a phenomenal guy all around. But I sit there and I watch his documentary, and I swear I tear up every time I watch it because it reminds me of me. Every single time, and even my parents will say that too. I put it on for them, and they're like, wow. Because he got in a car accident. He, did all the shit and the stuff that he wanted to do. And he did it, because he loved the business, whether it was, he had the broken ankle and you heard the story where he unplugged from his ventilator to go do a show and then came back and plugged back in. That was me. That was somebody like I can relate to. Like, yeah, that was my mentality. Did I overabuse medication to get there and do it? Absolutely. Did I almost kill myself? Absolutely. Am I glad I'm still here? Absolutely. There's a lot of things that, I did at that time just to keep going and just to stay relevant, just to try to get out there because I knew I already, I had something against me, which was the accident. So to me, it was like, hey, pill, I'll take it. Steroids, I'll do it. I'll take and do whatever I need to do to get to that next level. There was no stopping me. But at that point, I knew I was against the wall because I had a lot of stuff.
I remember you telling me a story where you worked a show with the WWE and you met like the Undertaker and some other guys.
Oh yeah. Up in, when I first joined the Wild Samoans Wrestling, Pops took me to a show up in Stable Arena, in Bethlehem. And it was a house show, and it was one of the most phenomenal experiences I ever had. I mean, you walk back there, Jesus. I mean, you see Undertaker, you see the late Paul Baird, you see The Rock, you see Edge and Christian, you see the Hardys, you see all these guys back from the Attitude Era, and it was just so like I can't believe I'm here. And I can't believe I'm doing this. And I can't believe I'm back here with these guys, like even in the same room with them. Because at the time I was like, literally, I was 14 years old. So I was like flipping out of my skin. And it was cool. And, another one who helped me, who I worked, helped me get to work WWE stuff and everything like that was Jerry Lawler. After I had the match with him in 2009, he gave me his phone number, and he gave me a contact down there, and he told me, he's like, I said, if you guys are looking for anybody, any extras, referees, whatnot, I'm willing to do anything. And he gave me name of a guy who's no longer employed there, unfortunately, Ty Bailey. And he's like, call him up. He'll set you up and tell him that I sent you. And I still talk to Jerry, and he's a very cool guy. He even helped me and my friends out with comp tickets to Raws and a couple of pay-per-views. Went to Survivor Series on him, everything like that. So he's been really, really cool ever since I worked him.
Yeah, I remember you showing me the number in person. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Hey, Nick, I just had
he's cool as shit.
Hey Nick, I just have a quick question. Like, just going back to when you were talking about the struggles and everything. Like, when I just recently read a statistic, it just basically says that the average life expectancy for a pro wrestler is only 39, and I just wanted to know, how do you feel when the public doesn't really understand the risks and dangers of the pro wrestling?
Well. That's a very good question, actually. And that's one of the main reasons I keep to myself around the town I live in, is because there's a lot of close-minded people here, and a lot of people that really, say they support you, or maybe try to say they support you, but in reality, they're their eyes are rolling the back of their heads, he's doing this crap, and, I don't really care about it, but, a lot of people don't realize the sacrifices, the commitments, the struggles, the pains, the everyday struggles, and even if you're on the indie level, even if you're doing the weekend stuff and everything like that, you're still feeling it every day of the week. I mean, there can't be any way you're not. I mean, I know back when when I did it. I'd work a show Friday, Saturday, and I'd be dead from Sunday when I woke up and got out of bed till Thursday, and I had to go back to training Thursday, and it sucked because I was, beat up, but I can't imagine guys right now, guys like that who work Friday, sometimes, he does Friday, Saturday, and sometimes, and that's on the indie level. I can't imagine guys on the big time level that are there day in and day out for years upon years. I mean, Jesus. And now Pops even told me when I first signed up, he's like, do you know when you take a back bump, it's like getting rear-ended by a motor vehicle going 30 miles an hour? I never knew that. That's exactly what he told me. He's like, every time you take a bump, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're getting rear-ended by a vehicle going 30 miles an hour. Right. Never knew that.
People say it's fake too, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely asinine, and it's just, it goes to show the people's intelligence, and that's why I really never talk about it with close friends or anything like that, or even, friends in general around my area. It's because nobody really looks at it as hey, this is something cool or something big. They look at it as, it's fake and, it's stupid and it's all, choreographed and planned out. But they don't know the struggles. They don't know what a person goes through and the type of training, the type of dieting, the type of sacrifice, the type of drives and commitments they have to do. Yeah, they work their normal 9-to-5s, and these other people say, that's a struggle. Well, try, doing that, then going to train, then going to do a show. All in the meantime, trying to keep your body to, a very high standard, because you're in the game. There's no room for error, and there's no room for slacking, and there's no room for letting yourself go. You always have to be above and step up a notch up everybody else, because if you don't think that there's guys on the indie scene right now that are waiting for somebody to fall or fail, you're crazy. Everybody is out for themselves, and it is a very friendly business, but there are politics even on the indie side that, it's just unbelievable. And I'm sure you guys know. You guys have been around the game long enough as well.
I was also just wondering, working with the legends such as Jerry the King, how has it been? How did it affect you getting over with the crowd?
Actually, we're working with Jerry Lawler, and I had people tell me this was the best match I've ever had in my and that goes saying. And I've worked over thousands of matches, but a lot of people tell me, and even my peers tell me, they're like, that was one of your best matches. And the reason was because it only happened with two people, and it happened with him, and it happened with Eugene. And Eugene did more. Both of them, I went up to them. I actually drove Lawler from I picked him up from the airport. I brought him to the show, and I'm thinking to myself, it was a 2-hour ride from here to the Philadelphia airport where I had to go pick him up. I'm thinking to myself, when I got asked, I'm like, this is great. I'm getting to work and like pick his brain and find out, what's going on tonight, because I'm the type that gets really nervous before matches and, even before shows, butterflies start coming in and, no matter what, I get amped up. And, once he gets in the car, we're going maybe 10 minutes and I'm like, I'm starting to pick his brain. So I'm like, so what do you think about tonight? What do you want to do? He's like, we'll figure it out. I'm like, really? I'm thinking to myself, like, you can't give me more than that. He's like, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And it was just one of those things. I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, I'll have time before we get ready to go, because obviously we're remaining. And so I'm sitting there before I'm getting dressed and everything like that. And I'm sitting there waiting for him, and I see him pop up because he was running around sending autographs, seeing pictures, whatnot. So I'm sitting there in the locker room getting dressed. I'm going up to him, and he looks at me. He's like, "Don't even start." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Not now." And this is like, the show's going on, so we're like, maybe 3 matches in, and we're like number 7, which is the last one. So he's like, "Don't even start. We got time." I'm like, all right, no problem. So I'm thinking to myself, usually they wait till after intermission. So intermission comes, boom, boom. He's still out there taking pictures. He comes back. He's like, "Tell me what you want to do." And I'm like, I ain't gonna tell you what I want to do. I'm like, you're the legend here. I'm sitting to myself. I'm like, well, I said, I do this, and that. And he's like, I named 3 things. And he's like, well, how about we just call it out there and we just listen to the crowd? I'm like, really? I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, have some fun. He's like, all you need to know is that you'll be taking the pile drive. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, all right. I said, I can kind of deal with that. I said, I wish I knew, I just don't want to screw anything up. He's like, well, if you keep your ears open, you won't screw anything up. And we went out there and, he had Stacy the Cat Carter with him, and I had Al Snow's actually with Cindy Bobcat. And I had her in my corner, which made it pretty cool because we had them to like play off, and it was very, very cool to be able to do that. And we're just going with it. And it was just I didn't even think to myself, like, as I'm getting in the ring, I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm wrestling the King right now. But at the same time, I wasn't like nervous, like oh, I gotta remember this, I gotta do this and that. My brain wasn't going back and forth for the first time because I was living in the moment. And literally, that's when it like clicked. And it took me that long when guys, now that I see guys are like, yeah, we don't even need to talk to each other, plan anything out. We can just go in there and call it on the fly. And that's what gets, the younger guys over, is because they have the ability to do that, which is cool. To me, I always needed, like a little story. I needed something to feed off of, and I didn't really, get that a lot. A lot of guys just wanted to go out there and call it. Now I can understand that because it's much more fun and believable, and you don't get yourself all worked up beforehand.
So Nick, before I had a question for you. You were telling me a story about you and Eugene, and that you were the champion, and they wanted you to lose the belt.
Yeah. I was the PCWA champion, and we were up in Palo Alto, Pennsylvania, and I can remember it because another one, I picked him up from the airport too, and we're going down, and I'm trying to get his brain pick because Nick is a very, very, everybody remembers him as Eugene, but Nick is more, if you research him, phenomenal worker. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do we plan on doing tonight? He's like, we're going to have fun. I'm like, okay. Again, simple answer. Mm-hmm. So, he's like, we're changing. He's like, so you're the champ, huh? I'm like, yeah. And the thing was, I watched it before. That show, there was like a mini battle royal or like some kind of match. And like, I'm sitting there talking to Nick, and all of a sudden I get a tap on the shoulder from the promoter. He's like, you're going out there for this. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm working him in the main event. He's like, yeah, we need you out there for this. I'm thinking to myself, all right, I'm just going to go out there and do something small and then come back. And, go. I said, I need to focus on this. And the promoter's like, it'll be quick. So, I'm looking through the curtain waiting to go out. And I'm looking around, and they're like, yeah, this is for the vacant PCWA Pennsylvania Championship, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, they're not, I wasn't a part of the match. And then, like, everybody's beat up at the end. And then, I got told, just go out. I'm like, all right. I go out, I do something. I think I did something. There was people knocked. There was like 4 people in there. They were all knocked down. I just covered somebody, and the ref was out there. 1, 2, 3. I'm sitting there like, wow, did this really happen? I get back, everybody's looking at me and laughing. I'm like, you guys all ripped me. I'm like, you guys are cocksuckers. And I was tearing up. It was a very awesome moment. I'll give them that. So again, the business and the peers inside, whether, some are fake, some are real, whatnot, but, to me, they're all family, and unless somebody says something to my face, I'll never treat them anything as otherwise, and I'll always have their back under 10%, no matter who and what they are. And it was just very cool. And before we went out there, Nick's like, so you're the champ? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I said, because he told me he was going over, but he didn't tell me how. And, you guys know the legends don't like to lose. You never hear a story where, an indie guy on an indie show beats, a name guy. It rarely happens. But Nick was very cool because he was like, he told the promoter, because it was me, him, and the promoter there. And the promoter's like, yeah, you got your belt, but he's like, you're going to end up losing it tonight. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I'm working Eugene, And Eugene's like, well, I'm not planning on coming back here. And he's like, unless you want to pay me to come back, I don't plan on coming back here. I'm not, not a member of your roster. And the promoter looked, and he's like, well, that's kind of up to you guys. The promoter left, and Nick looks at me, and he's like, well, Nick, he's like, it looks like you're keeping the belt tonight. And I'm like, what? And then, like, the music starts hitting. I'm like, well, what are we doing for a finish? I'm like, well, what are we doing? And he's like, just keep your ears open. He's like, you're going over. You're keeping that belt tonight. I'm like, what? I didn't know anything. It was all a shock to me. I get out there, and boom, 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 we just start going. And the match is on YouTube. And we're lighting everything up, and I'm listening to the crowd, and he didn't tell me a thing. The only thing he told me was at the very end, and I didn't know how I was going to go over or what I was going to do. He's like, as he picks me up at the end, he's like, he whispers, he's like, RKO. I'm like, all right. Then with the RKO, I go to cover him. I didn't think I was going to win. 1, 2, 3, and then he's like, get out. I ran out with the title and do the healers thing. And that was one of those moments again, right up there with working the King, right up there with working Snuka. Those things are unforgettable. You'll never have them again.
So can you kind of tell us what are you doing nowadays? Are you still wrestling? Or are you trying to get back into wrestling?
I'm trying to get back into it. I've been focusing on myself, trying to get myself back into shape. I think I'm happy where I'm at right now. I'm feeling, good about myself and everything like that. So I think right now, I'm looking, there's several opportunities that opened up. I was supposed to do a show this month up in my town. I was planning on, going down there for a show. They invited me down, but at the same time, I got another opportunity, for like a bodybuilding modeling shoot up in Hazelton. So I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I'll try something different because business is always going to be there. And that's what thing Alpha and Pops always told me. They're like, the business is always going to be there. If you get other opportunities in the meantime, you should take them. So I'm looking into that. I've also been auditioning for Survivor, which is a CBS reality show. I'm really trying to get into that. I'm actually waiting for a phone call from Mark Pizzuto from WBRE TV to let me know when they would want me down there. It's supposed to be sometime within the next month or two to get more interviewing done and everything like that, because I went to an audition last year up in Mohegan Sun and Wilkes Barre. And I just got an email a couple of weeks ago from Mark, and he told me, he's like, we're planning on doing something again this year, and we'd like to have you a part of it if you want to come down and see what you got again. I'm like, all right. So, I'm waiting for that, and also I'm looking at things, and now it's kind of different because there's a lot of young guys there, a lot of guys whose games stepped up, and the business, of course, to me, has changed and grew for the better. And I'm happy for everybody, and everybody's working their asses off. And I just don't want to be the one guy that comes in and doesn't live up to the expectations. So I want to get myself really ready, and I want to try to go out there and prove that, hey, I still got it.
Oh, that's good, Nick. We're about to wrap up, so if you have any, is there a way people can contact you if they want to reach out to you?
Yes. I'm on Facebook. I'm Nick Dimitratos, which is spelled Dimitratos. It's Greek, of course. I couldn't put my worker name on there because Facebook and everything like that. I have a YouTube channel, Destiny84, which has some videos, which has the Eugene video, which has me working Badass Billy Gunn, which was another, that was a story itself. But that was a cool opportunity and a cool moment. But yeah, I got that going on. So I'm hoping to get myself more out there and just see what I got. Cause I'm 31, and like you said, your 30s is where there's like a cutoff there. So I'm trying to get myself back quick.
Yeah, I hear you, man. All right, man. We're gonna end here. You can follow us at Wrestling IQ 101 on Twitter and Instagram.
Cool.
Don't forget,
if you can send me a link up on Facebook and everything like that, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, we will, man. Certainly.
All right.
All right, man, Nick. Have a good night.
Take it easy, Nick. Thanks.
You will.
Thanks, Nick. We
and subscribe.